I wrote and made a book, and here it is. And I wanted to do that most of my life. I'm pretty excited. When this came in the mail, I was really giddy, I guess is probably the best word for it. when I opened it, I'm like, ooh, it's here, and look at this.
Hey there!
Hey there!
We are Bears in Excess.
I'm Eric.
I'm Christian. This is the Bears in Excess show. Welcome to our channel and show.
Yes.
This episode is going to be funny because the guest is already here.
Where is he?
He's here. We're going to talk to him. Hey, hi.
How are you?
So we're going to talk to Joshua R. Pangborn. Yes, he's known as actor, writer,
Scriptwriter, producer, singer.
He's everything. He's all over. And now he can say he's an author.
Yes, a published author.
Because he's about to release his first book called Homo Phobias.
It's an anthology of different stories that he wrote.
So we're going to talk to him about that, about the book, about what happened. And maybe he might say something about new seasons for his shows.
Yes.
You see, that's if
Stay tuned.
Convince him. Hello, Joshua.
Hey, Joshua.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
You're welcome. I think we're the guests had the most.
Yeah, show. We've had you at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
2 times. This is my 3rd time here. I was actually looking at this recently because I was trying to compile all my old interviews and things I've done for different podcasts and different shows, and I want to put them all and move them onto my Patreon so that way I can put them all in one place. And I realized, I've been on this show twice already, so this is my 3rd time here, and I'm excited to be here.
If you count on this, then it'll be more times.
Yes, so I am.
T-shirt like, he's here with us.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to be there with you in person, at least 2-dimensionally, if not.
Yeah, say hi, Joshua. Hi.
Say hi to yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about your book, Homo Phobias. Where did you get the title from?
Sure. When I decided to write the book, I knew I wanted to have a title that told people exactly what they were going to be in for. And when you're doing a short story collection, it's a little hard sometimes to find a title which encompasses exactly what's inside. So I wanted to do, I had 2 other titles I wanted to do, but I couldn't use them because they're already used for other things. And I wanted to do Scream Queen, and I wanted to do Queer for Fear. But both of those titles are already used. Thank you, Ryan Murphy and Brian Fuller. You've already used those titles on me. So I decided to use Homo Phobia because I wanted everyone to know that this was a collection of stories about queer people, and B, a collection of stories that were horror. And so therefore, with Homo Phobias, you get that. And it's also a nice way of reclaiming the word a little bit and doing something, I think, positive with it. So
for when you were writing for your web series, you wrote it knowing it would be a visual. But with your short stories, how did you transition your thought process into writing the book?
It's always hard I think some people can bounce from medium to medium very well. I definitely think I am a screenwriter and a playwright more so than I am a short fiction writer, in the sense of knowing at least the experience that I have. I think I'm a pretty good fiction writer too, but if you read the book, you'll have to decide that on your own. I will allow you to decide that on your own. And I think that it's I think that it's challenging to switch when I've done, as you said, I've done decades at this point of writing for film and television and theater. So what I wanted to do was still create a visual experience for the reader in the book, but I find that I default to a very conversational and dialogue heavy approach to short stories. And I think the positive responses I've gotten from readers is that it is a chance for them to feel more immersed in the scenes and everything. But I've also found that I tend to be I think, a bit more Euclidean in nature when it comes to writing description and setting. I give you what I think is important for you to make the scene in your head without sort of waxing poetic. I don't, not to disparage anyone who does this, but I don't spend 5 pages writing about what the food on the table looks like, which is what some authors do. But I do give you enough clues about the characters or the setting to tell you hopefully what you can picture in your head. Because I think also some of the fun of reading short fiction is that you have a chance to imagine what you're reading and picture it in your head and come up with the characters and the locations and the actions on your own. And that's sort of, I think, the freedom and the fun of being a reader of short fiction. And I wanted to play with that a little bit for people who at least like to read the way I do. So,
Are you planning on turning the short stories into like a video or a short film or?
that's actually a very good question, because
So I could really see it being turned into like a bunch of shorts.
and that's exactly what I actually plan to do with it. One of the I was inspired by one of the things I was inspired by when I decided to finally make this was write this book was I know Brandon from Monster Makeup, which is a queer horror production company based out of Providence, Rhode Island. He took some of his scripts and he adapted them into novels because he wanted to be able to get them out there, get people to read them, get them invested and interested, with the plan of someday filming them as movies. And so when I sat down to figure out what stories I wanted to write, I decided to pull from my script ideas and my scripts that I've already written and sort of adapt them into a short story scenario. So yes, that's a very long answer to tell you the short answer, which is yes, I actually do plan to film most, if not all, of these stories at some point.
You should send them into the Inside Out Film Festival here in Toronto.
I will have to do that. That's on my list of festivals to look at and send to because I've heard wonderful things about it. So
Yes, they're very popular.
Very popular. A lot of fun to go see. And I think they would be perfect because I had a chance to read the book and I could really see them being turned into little short stories.
I'm glad that was the effect then, because that's what I wanted that's what I want for readers, is to have sort of almost a cinematic feel for them when they're reading it. And it sounds like for at least you, I have succeeded. So
Yes, I did.
But what made you come up? What did you decide to write a book?
So I've always wanted to do a book. When I was a little kid, I would start novels all the time. I have I don't have them anymore. I think my mother threw everything away. But at one point, I had a lot of notebooks and binders at home of stories that I started as potential novels, and I never got around to finishing them. I've always wanted to write a book, and it was probably, I'd have to go back and look. I think it was end of last year or beginning of this year. No, it was towards the end of last year. Dhafir Jackson, who is an actor in one of my movies that I have coming out later this year, he came to me and suggested that he helped me put together a book, because a lot of what I write as movies, he feels could be great short stories as well. And Dhafir is someone I met because he's an editor, and he puts out his own books. About 2 years ago, I think, he invited me to be in his collection Theater While Fat, which is a collection of essays and interviews with fat actors, and he wanted to. And so he invited me to be a contributor to that collection, and he interviewed me for it. So that's how our relationship began. And then I cast him in The Brooklyn Butcher, which is one of my features coming out. And after that, we had two good projects we worked on together. and he came to me the idea, hey, why don't you let me be your editor, and we can publish a book together. And I thought, this is perfect because I did not have the bandwidth and the ability to. Well, I have the ability. I didn't have the bandwidth and the time to look at how I could do all the hard work of publishing, which is the formatting and all the technical specs and everything. And Dhafir knew all of that because he's done this already several times. So he was more than excited and willing to come on board and do that part of it, which actually made it really easy for me to just focus on one thing, which was writing the stories. And as you know from my many times I've spoken with you, I typically wear a lot of hats when I'm working on a project. So this was really nice to be able to just focus on one thing and be the writer and have Dhafir there to help with so many of the other things. And so that took so much stress and pressure off of off of making a book that I really couldn't say no. I mean, he made it so easy for me to say yes to writing a book, and guided me through everything and made it so simple and stress free. And I just loved the experience, and I'm really glad that I have him. I'm very thankful that I have him so passionate and invested in doing this with me.
It's very interesting, especially to make things easier.
It's so self-publishing is so much work, and not in the sense of like writing the stories, because obviously that's work, and that's most people think that's the hard part, but it's all the formatting, it's all the checking to make sure that the font is something you can use, and that you've got the right margins, and you've got the right everything basically. And there's so many things I would never have thought of that he knew that we had to do, that made my life so much easier, and I'm so grateful for it.
That's great. I noticed that you had certain recurring themes, such as mother-son relationship, gaining, online dating, obviously chubs and bears. Why did you choose those topics?
Well, I always wanted to, pretty much everything I write is always focused on sex positivity, fat positivity, and queer characters. That's sort of the nature of Sidekick Productions in general. So anything I make is basically fat, queer, and sex positive in some way, shape, or form. So I knew we settled on the idea of writing about love, basically. All the stories would be about love of some kind, either familial love, friendship love, romantic love, and the dark ways that people get love or lose love, or both. And but then after that, I wanted to just come up with stories that I would enjoy telling, and so a lot of them tended to revolve around similar themes, because I think for a lot of queer people, they're topics and that resonate the most with us. But I also like to do things that are outside the box. So yes, there is a story about gaining. There is a story about there's a couple stories about intercourse with demons. All sorts of things that you wouldn't expect. Hopefully, from a horror collection, but it's just something pops in my head and I see it. I don't necessarily set out to say I'm going to write a story about X. It's sort of the story that just pops in my head, and then I make it happen, basically.
Was it based on your life at all, or?
Most of the stories are not based on my life. I shouldn't say that. And there's always a little bit of, as I always say, there's always a little bit of something that an author writes that they put themselves into. So I mean, aspects of the character are either wish fulfillment aspects, or things that I can reflect on, things that I feel familiar, things that did happen. There's one story in the collection which I will not share which one it is, but there is one story in the collection which has an exact experience from my life in it. So, but I will allow the readers to read it and try to wonder what it is. So,
the demon.
Exactly. I had sex with a demon. So that is the one. You've guessed it right off the bat. So no, readers, I did not have sex with a demon. That is one I did not do. So
But all these stories came out easily from you, or some had more struggle to write. How is that thing? Because it, I believe your is they have a longer way, but this is a short story. Short story has switched the your mind, I
Yeah,
guess.
your writing
It's
style.
yes. I think that every story in this collection, for the most part, was something that I wrote pretty quickly. In the sense of like at least the first draft of it. I mean, obviously you go back through and you do rewrites and all that. I when I know a story, and this is same the true for a script as well. It typically just sort of tumbles out onto the screen, and I'm pretty fast at writing something when I know what I want to tell. And what's nice about the short stories is I knew what I wanted to tell, and there wasn't a lot of it to tell because it's only compared to what I'm used to writing a few pages. Obviously, with Skeleton Crew, when I'm writing a Skeleton Crew script, those can be 45 to 60 pages. A short story is usually 10 to 15 pages. So it's much faster to write a short story than it is to write a script. But that being said, I think that probably the most challenging story to write in this was. Hmm, I think The Gift was probably the most challenging story. That went through the most rewrites, I think. That had the most changes in it. And that's because I wasn't quite hitting what I wanted to hit in terms of the story that I was trying to get across with it. And the messages and ideas were more still in my head than they were on the paper. So it took a little bit more finessing with that story than any others. And then Under Contract was probably the longest one to write just because it's the longest story in the collection. So
How long would you say it took to write these stories? Like,
um
on
I would say each story would I think it's different for each one. But in general, I would say most of the stories are probably 5 to 8 hours of for the first draft.
And after all, I might be tired of reading them in the end. Like it's like musicians, and they release an album, they can't hear that anymore because they heard so many times.
It's true.
that-
Same thing when I'm editing a movie or something. I'm like, sometimes I need to step away, and I needed to step away with this. I was really, it was nice. Once I put the collection out to once I gave the collection to Dhafir, I stepped away from it for probably 4 weeks or so while he finished finessing it and working on all the technical specs for it. And then he sent it back to me so I could read through it and see if there was any errors or any problems or anything. And that's where I was able to go through and look at it with sort of fresh eyes after about a month off and be like, okay, I see what I want to change here, or oh, I really like this story now. This is it hits me even differently having some time away from it. But it's definitely repetitive if you are not taking a break once in a while, and that's why it's the best thing you can do is just step away and let have a break for a little bit. So
Important.
Yeah, very. How is it to publish a book in New York?
so we are publishing through Amazon. So it's Amazon is actually really good for self-publishing. Um, Obviously, it's not the same as having Penguin or something like that publishing the book, but with Amazon, it makes it very easy for you to make an account, and they're actually very user friendly. As I discovered over the course of making this publishing this with Dhafir and everything. Um, I will see how easy it is once the book is actually out. September 13th is the date that you can finally purchase a copy. So it is definitely. I'll be curious how this actually works once people are able to get it. I've noticed already that if somebody wanted to buy a signed copy of it, for example, they obviously can't do that through Amazon. So I have to figure out a way to make it to purchase a copy and then ship it to them after handling signatures and all that. So it's definitely not 100% clear yet. I am going to be doing a lot of learning while doing, basically. And that's how I've always functioned. I mean, with Skeleton Crew, you can see from season 1 to season 5, we've definitely learned as we went along. I mean, we didn't even know how to use lights in season 1, and then season 2, we learned all about lights, and that was fantastic. So
I was lucky you sent me a copy that I could read beforehand, so I love the book. And two of them that stood out as my favorites are actually The Gift, which you mentioned, and also True Colors.
oh, I love True Colors, yeah, and I love The Gift too. Why were they your favorites? I guess I'm curious.
I just read through them faster. It was more interesting for me. So, can you tell the readers about those two stories a little bit, like a
Sure.
teaser?
True Colors is a story about a young man who decides to find love because he's 19 and he would love to find love. And so he gets his very first fake ID and goes to his very first gay bar and has a very revealing experience while there. And The Gift is about a man who was raised by his mother and was told never to fall in love. And unfortunately, one day he falls in love, and then he finds out what happens because of that.
Yeah, I those two were my favorites, and they were well written, and I really liked them.
Thank you. Those are definitely those are two of the last stories I wrote for the collection too. Actually, I think uh, I think that True Colors may have been the second to last story I wrote for the entire collection. Uh, so I'm really glad you like them. Both of them were really fun to write, and both of them were really I really enjoyed where they went, and they did things that I really found. They're just really fun. I don't want to spoil too much for the readers, but I really enjoyed them. I think that they're really fun and a nice balance of romance and darkness. I think in them.
Yeah. Another one I really liked, I forgot the title, but it took place mostly in a bathroom.
Mm. The Court of King Dong.
Right, yes. I
That
really like that
is
one as well.
that's such a fun story. That was a story I wrote for another collection. It was published in Voices from the Mausoleums, That Old House, The Bathroom, which was a collection of horror stories which all took place in the bathroom. So there's every collection and every story in that collection is set in the bathroom, but there's such diverse stories from that. Like you would think that if they're all in the bathroom, it would all be very similar stories, but they are not. But I love the Court of King Dong. It is such a fun story. Although I think all of the stories are fun. So that if I use the word fun, that's because I think they're all really fun stories. But I think that the Court of King Dong. Well, I can tell you that we've actually already filmed that story. So the Court of King Dong will eventually come out as a short film at some point, hopefully this year, but it might be a little bit later into next year. But that was such a pleasure to make a movie out of, and it's what's nice about taking the story and adapting it a little bit into film is that it's not going to be 100% translation. So readers of the story will still have something fresh and exciting from watching the film of it.
Which story or stories is or are your favorites? I know it's hard since they're all your baby, but you must have had one that like
I was
really.
just about to say that it's very hard for me to pick a story that is my favorite in here. Let me go to the table of contents and because that's a very interesting question. I think that for me, I think for me right now, I think either The Gift, The Black Egg, or Under Contract are my favorite stories right now. So, possibly The Gift. I think The Gift, actually, yes. If I had to pick one, I think The Gift. So,
Great minds think alike.
Eric, you and I are on the same page with this one, I think. So,
But I also like the other one you just mentioned.
The Black Egg or Under Contract?
No, you talked about earlier in last question, in the shower.
Oh, The Court of King Dong.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love the ending. It was
The
I
ending
had
for,
a feeling that
I think The Court of King Dong is a really interesting journey that you go on in that story. It's some unexpected stuff happening in it, I think, and it's so you go a lot of places and you never leave the bathroom. So it's a fun journey. So
yeah.
You know, it's the feeling to see a book that could just use the book. How
You
do you
actually
feel when you
had
saw the
a
first time? I was on my baby.
yes, no, I mean I am. This is a proof copy, so I can't. It says right across the cover, not for resale. So, but I mean, having a copy of my book in my hand that and be like, I wrote this. This is incredible. I mean, I'm not someone who hasn't made things before. I've made movies, I made shows, but you can't really hold those in your hand. This I get to hold in my hand and be like, I wrote and made a book, and here it is. And I wanted to do that most of my life, so I'm pretty excited when this came into the mail. Came in the mail. I was really giddy, I guess is probably the best word for it. when I opened, I'm like, "Ooh, it's here!" And look at this! Ah,
Did you
uh,
smell it?
I did smell it. I did sort of. It's just such it's such a delight to physically hold something that I made and have it look like a book. I mean, I read books for for many years. I was a voracious reader as a child, and now to physically have something in my hands that I would have read when I was a kid. It's just I can't tell you how cool it is. I really can't. I'll
James,
try, but I can't. I mean, it's just so cool and so it's really something special to be able to. It's something special.
Touch it.
so Christmas came earlier.
It did. It came early, and it came in the middle of the summer. I guess Christmas in July, because that's when we got our first copy. So I had Christmas in July this year, I guess.
Are there any plans for like a release party of the book?
So the book is coming out on Friday, September 13th, and I'm actually I'm going to be Friday the 13th. I had no choice. I had to do that. So
was that planned or was that just by
Dhafir picked the date, I think, and it was. I think he picked it before I even realized it was Friday the 13th. He just said September 13th, and then I'm like, oh, it's Friday the 13th. Oh, perfect. We have to do that. That's the perfect date. Unfortunately, I am at a wedding that day. So, and I'm at a wedding on a cruise in Europe that day. So I will be doing a lot of tweeting and texting and things on my phone while I am at a wedding that day. So there won't be a party that day. But then I get back to New York on the 14th. And then on the 15th, I was invited to go to a book fair, and a sort of an author's a horror book fair hosted by the Brooklyn Horror Society in Brooklyn. So on the 15th, I'll be going and doing that. So I have my first event with a book 2 days after it comes out. And then at some point, probably in October, I'm thinking I'm going to do some sort of release party, even like a post-release party, basically, just to sort of celebrate the book and give people a chance to buy copies if they want them. And maybe I'll read a story from the collection, maybe have a singer or two come up as well to sort of celebrate. Ashley, who is one of the big members of Psychic Productions, who everyone knows as in most of the films and movies that we do and television that we do. She's really encouraging me to do a book party in October. So I think I'm gonna have to do it. So
Started the wedding.
Yeah.
Hello, Europe wedding. Here, my book.
I normally am not shy about sort of just promoting myself a little bit. I think at weddings is the only time I'm really like, well, it's not really about me today, so I guess I can't just. But you're right. I should at least bring a couple copies and be like, hey, this is the perfect thing to read after the wedding.
Yeah, for the married. Oh, honeymoon aboard. Here's my book.
I might have to do that. So
Is it a straight wedding or a gay wedding?
it's a gay wedding.
Oh, okay, even better.
Even easier.
All full of all bears and everything too. So
Okay, so perfect. Give a whole bunch of books to the the groom and groom, and they can give it away to all the people at the wedding.
Yeah.
that's a good idea. I will have to see if they'll be open to that. So
Cruz might give ideas for other books too.
Yeah.
Like,
I am it just might. I mean I've already envisioned several ways that I might perish.
And you could use the word cruising. Will you also be going on tour promoting your book?
I want to. As I think I mentioned to you offline that I have 2 feature films coming out this year. So I'm trying to see if there's a way that I can sort of package things where I go out on tour with the book and also do a tour of screening of the one or both of the movies. I'm starting to look at that for the late fall and early spring, maybe.
it's interesting because years ago, Bear City, they released the 3rd movie here. Wasn't at time of festival or anything. It was just a day.
Yeah,
We
and
did in
we
a
co-hosted it.
was screened in a movie theater, and then we had a Berserk says Chub the Tubs.
It was a Chubs of the Tubs event, and
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of indie producers have been doing. I know Doug did the same thing in New York when he released Bear City 3. It was just sort of it wasn't a festival. I think he just released it, and we had a big screening at a movie theater and everything. So
Yeah, it also was co-presented by the festival. Even if
Yeah.
it wasn't inside the festival, because another time was with the stamp of the festival. So it
okay.
a lot.
and also Doug came to Chubs of the Tubs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he did. He did. So it might be an idea.
Yeah.
Put them
I will have to. Trust me, I'm seriously considering it. I'm trying to think about all the places I might go, all the people I know, who in different cities who might be able to help me figure out how to host events like this. And you two have definitely crossed my mind because I've wanted to go to Toronto, and this would be a wonderful excuse. So
Yes,
Very true.
definitely.
Very true.
Since we're talking with you now, are there any future plans for Skeleton Crew, Demon Doctor, or The Art of Blowing It?
Since I like to be busy anyways.
Yeah.
well, but I'm very happy to say that there are plans for all of them.
Whoa.
We are actually filming season 2 of The Art of Blowing It right now. We've been filming that all summer, and we are almost finished filming with principal photography. And I'm hoping that that's going to come out early next year-ish. And Skeleton Crew, we have a spin-off series of Skeleton Crew, which is in post-production right now. And then we're going to be doing at least 1 or 2 other projects Skeleton Crew related. And then Demon Doctor season 2, the rest of season 2 is in post-production right now. And then we will probably get started on season 3 of Demon Doctor at some point next year as well. So yes, all 3 series will be continued because I love making them, and I think people like watching them. So
See, Ryan Murphy's going to talk to you about this sometime.
Yes.
He's going to discuss. Come with me.
I hope so. That's my dream. So, well, not my exact dream, but something like that would be my dream. So.
Yeah, maybe nice.
Are you planning to write another book?
Dhafir and I have talked about that. We've talked about maybe doing Homo Phobias Volume 2, or something else related to horror and being queer. I'm not sure yet. I hadn't thought about I haven't even, for once, I haven't thought that far ahead. Usually, I'm always thinking about the next project that I'm doing while I'm still working on the current project. So this is one of those instances where I was like, let's get this book out, and then we will see what people think and if they like it or not. And if they want to read more, then I might have to do so. I'm tempted to go back and see what I'm really curious what writing a novel would be. So if I did something, that might be what I do, is writing a novel, because um, I would like to have a novel, but I also don't have a story for one yet, so I wouldn't know where to begin there.
Maybe
I
you
mean,
should.
I'll find something. I mean, I know where to begin. It's just I don't have. I like to always have a good story in my head before I start writing. So if I come up with something that feels like a novel, then I might start writing.
Maybe the cruise, Europe, all those beautiful
Yeah.
places, and historic.
It's true.
My inspired.
And the beautiful men.
I get a lot of really great ideas when I am least expecting them. So I'm not expecting ideas on the cruise. So that is a good chance. And then Europe is going to open my mind up to so many things, I think. So
Oh, you're gonna go crazy there. Don't worry.
I am very excited. I'm super,
So much
super,
history.
super psyched, because I've been wanting to go, especially to London, for basically all my life. And now I'm going. So I'm trying not to hype it up too much, because I know that if I get too excited about it, and then nothing could ever live up to the hype. So I don't want to put that pressure on London. I want to just, I want to enjoy when I go there.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Have you learned any lessons from your first book that might make your second book easier?
Definitely not worrying about the length. One of the big concerns I had for this was, I'm worried that the book is too short. I'm worried the book is too short. And Dhafir told me not to worry about it. First of all, second of all, I didn't need to worry about it, because it's a great length now that I have it put together and all. But third of all, it's much like with film and television. When I'm making it, I don't need to worry. It'll be as long as the stories need to be and the collection needs to be, and I don't need to force anything out to make it longer or shorter or anything. It should be what the piece of art calls for. So that's definitely one thing there. The other thing is just knowing that I did it. So I did it once, which means I can do it again. And I had self doubts, I guess, because we always have our self doubts when we're making things. But I think for sure in this case, I feel relieved and comforted by the fact that I did it, and I can do it again, especially if I have someone like Dhafir there to help me. So.
Yeah. Okay. Please invite our viewers to read your book.
Absolutely. I really hope that you come and to love Homo Phobias as much as I do. And I want you to read it. So you can read it either as an ebook or as a paperback. Both are available on Amazon.com. You can go to Amazon and find the link to the Kindle version or to the paperback version. Both versions are great. The paperback, obviously, you get to have a lovely physical copy, and you'll get to see this wonderful cover that Dhafir designed. But all in all, please, if you're interested in queer horror, if you're interested in bears and chubs, which if you're watching this, you probably are. But if you're interested in bears and chubs, if you like horror, if you want to read something that people who have read it have told me is really weird and bizarre and a little bit scary, or a lot scary, depending on your sensibilities, I think that you'll enjoy this collection. I had a lot of fun writing it for readers, and I want to hear what you think about it. So please consider getting a copy of Homo Phobias, and then telling me what you think about it. You can go to Goodreads and publish a review on there. You can DM me and just tell me what you think. I'd love to know what you think, though, and tell me your favorite stories, the stories you can even tell me the stories you didn't like, but I'd rather hear the stories you liked. So you can tell me that perfectly. So.
Actually, that made me have an idea for one question. What's the idea of the cover? Since you're there,
I was just thinking that.
So I wanted very much, like I said with the title, I wanted very much to convey what the stories are about. I also wanted to convey that with the cover image, and I the stories are about fat horror and fat characters and fat people. And I wanted very much for the people who read this collection to know from the beginning, when they pick this up, they're getting queer, fat horror, which is what I care about and what I want them to know about. So I came up with the idea with Dhafir of somebody, of a fat shirtless man, almost an erotic pose, almost. With hands of demons and monsters grabbing him and pulling at him, and so we took a photo, and then Dhafir took the photo and created this from that image. So I want people to pick up this collection and realize from the beginning this is about fat queer horror. So if you don't want to read that, don't pick it up. But hopefully you'll read it and want to take a chance on it.
So thanks, Joshua, for talking to us.
Yes, it was great talking to you again because we've interviewed him twice before.
Yes, it was the third. So remember, this is his book, Homo Phobias.
Coming out Friday, September 13th.
Yes. So you can check his links on the description of the video. There's all his contacts, but most social media, etc. And also you can find our social media. How can you follow us?
And all that.
Etc. Hope you get the book, read it, hope you like it.
As much as I did.
Yes, so thank you so much for talking to us again.
And stay fluffy.